That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
All right, guys, here I'm going to break down probably one of the most polarizing prospects in this entire rookie draft. And really, I was thinking that I was going to be completely off of him, but the more I looked into it, the more I'm actually interested by this player. But as always, before we get into the video, I need y'all to go down there and like it, getting y'all 2 videos a day. And as long as they keep on getting likes, I'm going to continue to do it. But as soon as we stop getting likes on the video, I'm going to have to go back to doing 1 video a day just because the YouTube algorithm and how they push content out. But let's get into it. Antonio Gibson, drafted by the Washington Redskins. I think by now we all kind of know the story with Antonio Gibson. He went into the draft process as a wide receiver. A lot of people said he was more of a hybrid player that profiled better as a running back. But I believe he kind of stuck to his wide receiver story and wanting to go in at that position just because of the NFL draft capital the wide receiver position brings compared to the running back position. We see year after year, especially in today's NFL. The running back position is just not that important for NFL teams and for NFL success. So that's why we see every single year teams push down these running backs down their draft boards and are willing to pay them less than before. Like I think the days of seeing that Todd Gurley, that David Johnson, that Le'Veon Bell contracts, those days are over. I think CMC got paid just because CMC is more of he's a different breed. We don't see the NFL value running backs like we did before. So Antonio Gibson comes in as a wide receiver just so he can get that rookie contract, and can't blame the guy. But we're going to evaluate him as a running back going into Washington. The team has already said that that's how they view him. And, I think that most platforms have already changed his position. I know MFL tweeted out that they are switching him over to running back, they may be giving him a running back and wide receiver hybrid destination, which I don't know if that's the case or if they're just making him straight up a running back. But if you can play him as a running back or wide receiver, that is just going to put a premium on that player just because of the flexibility it's going to allow you in your lineup. But we're going to talk about him just as a case of a running back. I don't know what ESPN has done up to this point. I don't know what Sleeper has done. I really just play on MFL. I think that's by far the best platform for Dynasty leagues. All of our Dynasty leagues are on MFL. And yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about. So let's talk about his production at Memphis. And in 2018, he pretty much had no production. And this was due to Darrell Henderson and Tony Pollard both playing for Memphis, both being extremely productive and great running backs. If you don't know Darrell Henderson's prospect profile, I don't know if you just are now getting into Dynasty really hardcore, but Darrell Henderson came out as a rookie last offseason, and he came in, he had 2 straight seasons of over 8 yards per carry with a good amount of volume. He was a fantastic running back running behind that great offensive line at Memphis. And yeah, I know he has not translated to the NFL level, but at the same time, this is kind of my situation with saying you can't blame J.K. Dobbins for splitting a backfield with Mike Weber, because Mike Weber was a great college running back. It's very easy for these running backs to be great college running backs and can't transition to the NFL level. That doesn't really dismiss what they were able to do in college. So 2018, we didn't really get to see Antonio Gibson on the field just because he was stuck behind 2 NFL pros. Now 2019, this is where he kind of comes into his role, but it's a different role and we don't necessarily see a ton of production from it. We're going to look at things in per game basis. We always know that I do this. I don't look at straight totals, because if you're looking at totals, you're not really getting the full picture and you're kind of just putting everything at a discount. You can look at Jason Witten's totals year after year, and you're going to think that he was a great tight end compared to a Hunter Henry or someone. But if you then look at the per game, you're going to really understand how these players are used and how they are productive week to week, because that's how we play fantasy. We don't play in a season-long format. We don't just add up everyone's points at the end of the season. You get points on a week-to-week basis. You have week-to-week matchups, and that's what we're going to look at. So in 2019, he had 2.7 receptions per game, 19.3 yards per reception. So immediately we see that he is extremely efficient every time he's catching the ball. I didn't necessarily get a chance to go in and track the data with where he was getting these receptions. I know that's really useful, and I like to do that at the NFL level. But for these college players, just the data isn't out there. Yes, I know some people may have access to it. I think maybe PFF, if you pay their couple $100 a yearly subscription, you get those numbers because they may track it. But I don't have those, so we're just going to look at overall 2.7 receptions and 19.3 yards per reception. 2.3 carries, and what's really impressive about this is I know he only had 2.3 carries per game, and you're going to tell me that he's coming into the NFL as a running back. But with what he did with these carries, I mean, just off the charts, 11.2 yards per carry. Yes, he was getting this in a very creative way, and most of these carries weren't just HB dives up the middle. I mean, we're not playing a very simple offense right here. I mean, he's getting creative touches, but that's the same thing he's going to be getting at the NFL level if an NFL team takes him. So, like I always say, yeah, we don't need to see a player be completely well-rounded. We need to see them excel in specific roles, because at the NFL level, if they're with a creative offensive mind, and if a team is willing to take them, I mean, we're going to expect that that team's going to create them a role which they should be able to succeed in. So, what was even more impressive about his 2019 season is he was kind of had the Henry Ruggs effect. He only had 71 total touches, but he had 12 total touchdowns. He was scoring a touchdown on about every 6 times he touched the ball. I mean, this is in a class with Henry Ruggs and just about no one else. So immediately we see that Antonio Gibson is a threat to go yard every single time he touches the ball, just because of his athletic ability. And he comes into the NFL Combine, and this is what really cements him as a running back on most teams' draft boards. He has a 68th percentile BMI for a running back, so good size. I mean, he's going to be able to handle a decent workload. And a 4.39 40-yard dash. So if you combine this 40-yard dash with his BMI, this puts him in the 99th percentile size-adjusted speed score at the running back position. I mean, this is an elite class. And I say all the time, I don't really care if these running backs have their production in college. We see it all the time, a Josh Jacobs, a Miles Sanders, an Alvin Kamara. You can come in at the NFL level and be a great running back in terms of checking all the boxes, and you don't really have to be that productive in college, because the NFL doesn't really use the running back position as a skill. I mean, you don't really have to be a David Montgomery level player at breaking tackles. I mean, look at David Montgomery. He is probably one of the best tackle breakers and best in line in between the tackles runner in the entire league, but that doesn't transition to fantasy success. What transitions to fantasy success is a team willing to give you the opportunity, and you having the size-adjusted athleticism, and you having the pass-catching ability to really do something with it. So if we look at Antonio Gibson, obviously he played form of wide receiver in college, so he has the pass-catching ability. We look at his athleticism, he is really off the charts, and we look at his size, he checks every single box you want to see. Now we go through and try to determine if the team's going to be willing to give him that opportunity. And let's look at the team investment. They actually took him with the 66th overall pick. And I know this may not seem like a very high investment at a wide receiver position, but if we look in terms of Antonio Gibson being a running back, this is a great team investment. This is actually better draft capital than we saw David Montgomery get last offseason. And remember what David Montgomery's redraft price, dynasty price, and really everything was. And we see Antonio Gibson come in. He's a better athlete. He's a better pass catcher. He has a better team investment. And he's running behind maybe a better offensive line. So at this point, I think Antonio Gibson's a fantastic dynasty value, especially considering where he's been going in our flock dynasty drafts. If you want to get in a dynasty league with the other listeners of the show and myself, make sure you go down there, join the Discord, shoot me a direct message, and I will put you down for our next dynasty league. But in these leagues, we've drafted 3 rookie drafts so far. I think 2 other ones are about to kick off. But so far, Antonio Gibson has gone at the 212, the 208, and the 212. So really, he's comfortably sitting at the end of the second round. So if you already have your dynasty league going, and if you were a competitor, you were a team that made the playoffs, you went far in the playoffs, you're going to be able to be looking at picking up Antonio Gibson with your second round pick. Now, that's just crazy to think about, especially if we look at the head coach situation in Washington. So Ron Rivera comes in, and we know that he has his history with Christian McCaffrey, and Antonio Gibson's the only running back that's tied to him and has any team investment. Ron Rivera has no allegiance to Darius Geis or to Bryce Love or to the grinding running back that they brought in from Tampa Bay. I can't even remember his name, Peyton Barber. But Antonio Gibson, I mean, he's going to slide in here, and this is telling me 2 things. One, Darius Geis is completely dead. Darius Geis is off all of my dynasty teams at this point. I want nothing to do with him. I'm cashing out for whatever I can get. after the team invested in Bryce Love with a 4th-round NFL draft pick, despite the injury concerns, and coming up and getting Antonio Gibson at the 66th overall pick. This tells me Darius Guice, in Washington's eyes, is nothing. They cannot rely on him, and he cannot stay healthy. So Antonio Gibson, let's talk about what we can expect from him in year one. I think that in year one, he actually has a decent floor just because of his return game ability. And we know that this is going to get him active on game day. This is going to really be able to have him in the team's game plan day one. So I'm excited for the early return. And if you do invest in Antonio Gibson, I am going to be a little hesitant to sell after year one. If he does have a disappointing year one, if he can't get on the field like I expect him to, I'm still going to be willing to hold on to him, keep him on my taxi squad just because of the athletic profile. He's a guy that has a great long-term outlook, and I'm very excited for him. So to recap the video, Antonio Gibson coming into rookie drafts, not that excited about him, but after digging in deeper, looking at his upside and looking at what the team thinks of him, I am willing to go out there and make the investment into Antonio Gibson. And I think if you can get him at the end of the 2nd round of your rookie draft, that is a great price to do so. But thanks so much, guys. Really hope you all enjoyed the video. Really hope you all have a great day.